Hello, everybody. Stu Smith and Jeff Nichols with a Tactical Fitness Report. And today we're going to actually answer a really good email that we got. And it was from a Coast Guard guy that just made his Maritime Safety and Security Team, MSSTs. Those are guys that are riding around high-speed boats.
Shipboard season.
Body armor, shipboard work.
VBSS.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what, yep.
Yep, they do all that stuff. So anyway, his email basically says, I've heard from a lot of the older guys complain about back and knee issues and being out on the boats for so many years. I feel like when I wear plates and gear, could compound any forces from the seas. He is not wrong there. So if you're trying to find out some information or resources on how to take care of the joints, while wearing body armor, but doesn't seem to be a whole lot out there for this particular topic. So you guys have any recommendations? And Jeff and I were talking beforehand. I think we're going to talk about a couple different things here. We're going to talk about the technique of sitting and standing, the gear to wear while you're, doing this, what extra gear you can if it works, and then it's training. That's probably the most important part, getting your body tolerant to this type of stress that, high-speed boats hurt. I mean,
there's no way around it. That's the, because you're receiving the force that the boat is creating. So think about that. You are attached to this boat. Your feet are on it. And a lot of times have handles. And you're holding on. You're a part of that. So when that boat leaves the wave potentially or comes up and rises and it hits, you're receiving that force. You're like, how could that be? Because you're part of that mass. Now, are you hitting the same force that's, the boat is actually making to the waves? No.
Yeah.
But because you're attached to that, you're receiving some of that shock wave.
Right. You're basically pulling G's.
Yep.
Right. And instead of being a 200-pound guy, your body's going to feel like, for that split second, a 400-pound guy.
Yeah, because force equals mass times acceleration.
Yeah.
You have increased your acceleration rate within an additional mass. Plus, because most of you are probably wearing, in a boat, for example, or a CH-47, a Chinook, or other transportation devices, if you will, or where there's vibration.
Personnel carriers. And
all those sort of things. And so there is. I like to explain this to people, or explain this a little bit in this way. It's if you take riding in a boat and make that equivalent to like the game day of a football, right? Not practice, right? Practice is what we'll talk about in a minute, but it's really about management of forces. And then we do that by preparing for them. So by putting a bunch of bracing on and all these sort of things, it really isn't super conducive. Just like, if we put a bunch of elbow and knee braces on a middle linebacker, that's really going to prohibit function. But it's also probably not going to be super safe because he's not going to have that opportunity to express speed and agility. So we don't want to lock somebody in a boat. That's a terrible idea.
And
that's like the old Mark V where it had those really awful seats and you clipped yourself in like a pilot, those things, bam, bam. And so we've gotten away from that, as far as I understand. And
I'm pretty sure they're probably riding in ribs.
Probably the 13-meter
twin engine, twin engine ribs that can get up and go.
Yep, they're light aluminum.
Yeah. But anyway, so let's talk about the technique of sitting. One of the things that I always liked to see when I was getting in one of those boats was either places to hold on to while I was standing, right, or like saddle seats instead of like a regular seat, just mainly because of the way your spine gets put. Like if I'm sitting, let me see this, this one. If I'm sitting on a saddle, I'm going to have a little slight bend in my lower back, right, because it just protects it a little bit better. They call it like the S curve. Or if you're sitting in a normal chair, you're going to have like this little C curve down there in the lower back. And that is not very conducive for taking those impact forces.
Think standing and seating in general for those of you, again, law enforcement sitting in cruisers for a long time, or just really anyone sitting at a desk for a long time. Now, you're sitting in your office cubicle or your squad car, and someone like some giant reaches down and grabs a squad car and just starts banging into the ground. That's essentially what's going on. And so being seated is not ideal. So all of the fast boats that we had at the command, they're all stand up.
Right.
And they had like 2 inches of vulcanized, like fairly soft rubber. It wasn't soft, but it was on the floor.
Right.
Again, we're trying to, it's minimizing, believe it or not, vibration as much as possible, because the impact is just kind of one of those things you got to prepare for.
Yeah.
And then if a lot of it, Mitch, like what Stu had said, is that it makes sense too, is we've all had really good boat drivers and bad ones. And that's not like a knock on the profession. I'm just saying, like, sometimes the waves suck. And sometimes, well, the new guys have got to learn how to drive. So they're not going to start off good. And so sometimes you end up being in a boat with a guy that's learning to drive because they have to. And it can get a little bit rough.
Yeah, yeah. So you learning how to go with the wave, versus go through the wave. That is a skill that takes some time.
And there are some guys out there that I've experienced, most of them. I can't say that I had one experience where the boat driver was new, and it was a pretty rough go. But the boat drivers that I had, or that I was exposed to at the command, man, they're legit. I mean, because those guys spend almost every day out on that water, and they get to learn the waves, and they can see, like, when you're driving on the street, you can just kind of see that guy's going to pull out, and they do. You just get that feel for driving, and you get some boat guys, man, and it's cool to watch them because there's a lot going on. You have a throttle man, you have a steer man a lot of times. In our boats, you always was 2 people. There's never the throttle and steer man never did it. And so it's a teamwork, and you get to learn, and you can see these waves break, and you can just see the driver make these changes, and they're just riding these waves. And it's still, you got to be your head about you because the ocean is so unpredictable. But I've had some really awesome drivers, fortunately.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, one thing you mentioned too is, you got to treat this, your day on the boat, like a game, right? It's probably unfortunate you can't treat it like a football game, which might occur, once a week. So maybe treat it like a baseball game, so to speak, because those baseball players play 5-6 days a week, sometimes 7 days a week, sometimes 14 days in a row. Pro baseball players. So you gotta, it's got to be a game day. So, and it's probably, depending on the seas, you really need to treat it like a leg day, because you are going to do a lot of isometric flexing. Knees are slightly bent throughout the whole thing, just so you don't jam your knees together, which could be really painful. Last thing you ever want to do is jump straight kneed and land with that kind of force. It's just going to go right up your spine, and it's painful. So you're going to be doing a lot of isometric flexing. So let's real quick, before we go into, the mentality of, and the actual training ideas. I always thought about something that I didn't have, when we were riding these boats was something I wouldn't want to necessarily put under my uniform, but something I could put over it, like like the squat wraps around your knees, so something I could easily rip off when we're done, versus a brace or something that goes up against the skin and your pants are over it. Now you're kind of wondering, trying to run around with your knees braced like that. But I just thought real quick, it might be a real good way to, have some knee support while you're out there, but outside of your clothing.
It doesn't affect you. And like I said, we don't need this stiff, there's different variances of stiff wraps for knees. Don't wear like the competition ones where you're like an 800-pound squat and there's not a lot of elasticity to them. Get the ones that have a lot of elasticity to them. Think of it as like a really high-speed ace bandage.
Yes,
and it doesn't have to be wrapped tight. That's the thing is don't miss. What we don't want is a lot of rigidity. That gives you nowhere to actually move with the waves. Yeah. We just want something to basically take maybe 10% of that load off, so the range your bones still articulate normally, right? You're not restricting and certainly not constricting blood flow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're not, and also moreover, because if you're constricting or restricting, you're going to lose feeling in your feet or your hands. And you definitely don't want that in cold water or just in general.
Yeah.
So again, less is more. Just keep that in mind. You don't want to brace it up. I mean, the only place maybe like, maybe you've had like a bunk wrist. Maybe you hurt your wrist or hurt an elbow. Maybe you could use a general wrist strap a little bit tighter, but those are quick to take off like in the gym anyway.
Yep.
I used to always run, I would always run elbow supports, just sleeves, like tight sleeves, because I was always hitting my elbows.
Yeah.
And it was more of a reminder to not be like this, because I'd get like this and then my arms would start hurting because I'd be like holding on tight and then my elbows would hurt and then I'd have to go climb or something.
Something we always used to have too is, knee pads anyway. And that's kind of a moderately constricting support, for your knee, especially if you're crawling around and, like stuff that you have to do when you're on, moving around, shooting and moving, stuff like that.
There's really very little that you can add a support. Now, if you've had an acute injury, then you use an acute support. You might be a little bit stiffer, right? If you're not, and we're not saying don't use support. It's just, you can't stop the vibration. You can't stop the trauma. I mean, it's no different than like if you were to put weight on your back, like not much. Like let's say you put 95 pounds of barbell on your back and you step up on a foot box, like a foot high box, you jump off and try to go straight legged. That's, the legs are going to win. What's going to happen is the spine's going to go like that. So what we're trying to do is keep a good thoracic and lumbar and cervical spine, especially now that we have a helmet on, right? If you have night vision, this thing's really beating you up, So there's only so much support you can provide. The best support you can provide is that physical preparation.
Yeah.
So how about that, Stu? So if you're, what physical preparation advice can you offer?
Man, I would start off with, it is core and legs, and I mean, it's everything. I think a tactical fitness program could cover you for this type of stuff because it will have exercises like deadlifts and squats, front squats, especially I think would be really helpful in this.
Agreed.
Farmer walks up a flight and down a flight of stairs, just kind of work on, maybe even skip a stair or two, just kind of work on a kind of a deep lunge with a little extra weight on, and working your grip. Maybe just have one hand in there too, so you're not having both hands to kind of balance you out. You have to balance it out with your core, while you're walking that farmer walk. And then I also like throwing in hip hinges and some balance work, so like a one-legged deadlift or just one-legged toe touches. Things like that to work on balance and try to work those hips a little more unilaterally.
Your home runs, Stu. I agree. Like that unilateral, like just get yourself like on an Airex pad or nothing at all, right? And then take like a kettlebell, light one, like a 10-pound kettlebell, and hold it in this position with your left hand. That's what I'm demonstrating. And then just balance on your right leg. Stick your left foot up. And now we've got an unbalance. And the hips are having to fire, because that's really what's going to happen is when we land, those knees are going to want to pop out or pop in.
Yeah.
We want to create a safe unbalance or like a slack line.
Yeah.
Holy moly, just stand there. And I have a slacker in my backyard. I just have a broom handle. So I'm using it as a balance. Nice. And I have both feet on. I take one foot up and the hip just wants to fire. The leg starts moving and finally it just settles. Because that's when the muscles are contracting at a high rate, they shudder. Mm-hmm. Well, that's what you're encountering. That's what you're encountering on a boat, but at a higher frequency. Well, we don't want to stick you on a power plate at a high vibration and do stuff. It'll just, it'll hurt. It'll be uncomfortable. So that's, again, I agree. I think that unilateral stuff is super valuable. Yep. For me, I would do exactly what Stu. The other thing I would add to that is, in addition to, is like what I used to like to do is get like the plyo boxes that you can move. Like one's 18 inches high, one's 12, and one's like, get kind of a higher one and get a heavier medicine ball. And you put it up high, so it's about waist high. And you go, you bear hug it with a gable, squeeze, go to extension with your back, and you stand up. So they're basically a sissy squat. It's just a squat, right? You're just you got a high box, you grab
Yep.
stand up, right? And then you go over the shoulder and you dump it on another box behind you. So you're not going all the way to squat. Because when you're on a boat, you're kind of like this. You're not
right.
You're not seated.
Right.
But we don't. It's a little bit of specificity, I suppose.
I like that one.
And that's what I do all the time. That's why I have like a 50, a 70, 100 sound sandbag, and it puts you in this good stable position that you might be like this high air chair. That's a lot of times where you're trying to absorb from there.
Right.
So if you're really good at creating an isometric squeeze and then standing up through it and then moving, bam, and then you turn and then you throw it over the other shoulder. You just do that 6, 8, 10 times for a couple sets in conjunction with, yes, a lot of unilateral stuff, farmer's carries, right? Because we want to load everything. We want to load the neck. We want to do that through grip because you're going to be holding that anyway. And then you're going to be going to climbing, a lot of people. So farmer's walks, dumbbell walking lunges is a good one.
Yeah.
Right? Especially when you go to climbing too, and in vibration, we can get a light dumbbell or get like a 25-pound plate, put it overhead, and go into walking lunges. So we want to really fire, like strengthen those intercostals and the ribs, strengthen the spine.
Yep.
And this is about the only time not only time. This is one of those opportune times to do. I'm not a big fan of Zerker squats, but I like the idea of underhooking a big sandbag. Doing walking lunges or just carrying it for a good distance, not to where you're failing. It's
right.
It, boom, 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 boom. Pick up the pace maybe a bit. As soon as you start doing anything, drop it.
Yeah.
Right. Because you'll find, just like anything else, over time you'll be able to walk further and faster while maintaining that good posterior and anterior stability. So sandbags for you guys.
Yeah.
Variances at varying loads. Right. You get a dumbbell, a long dumbbell. Put a 45-pound plate on one end and a collar and put a 10 or 15 on the other and farmer's walk with it off balance without the hip sliding. And then on the way back, turn it around so the 45's on the other side.
Love it.
It's like a modified farmer's walk. Or go, a 20-pound dumbbell in one hand and a 50 in the other.
Yep.
Walk 20 or 30 meters, swap them out, come back.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's really the kind of core. Yeah, that's the kind of core workouts you need. This isn't preparing for a sit-up test kind of core. This is actual living, carrying weight, load bearing, taking impact. If you're nursing your knees, I don't necessarily think you need to do a whole lot of box jumps type stuff. When you're doing this, because when you finish a boat ride, let's say it's 2.5 hours you're out there on the boat ride. When you get out of there, you're going to be exhausted, from bouncing around, catching yourself. You're going to have soreness, especially if you haven't, really trained in a while. You're going to have soreness all throughout your back, your neck, your knees, hamstrings, thighs, all that's going to be sore. Just from taking this impact. I'm going to make one gear recommendation. And it's fairly general, but it's specific in its detail. Is that there are a lot of companies out there trying to make these water boots and make them drain this and do that and all those sort of things, and it's okay. But the only one I've ever really found that's fairly comfortable, and I just know that now because our last week at the clinic, we and I both wore those Ultimas. Oh,
they
yeah.
were great in the water. They were. And so my point is not to pimp them. It's just I've had the OTB boots. I've had the water socks, and they all suck. You are way better off getting an extra, well, I don't really want to get my work boots wet. You should, because they're good, stable boots.
Yeah.
You don't want crappy, loose heels and sloppy nylon that you barely can tie, because to be honest with you, I haven't found any water boots other than those Ultimas that are worth a darn. So
that's a good point.
If you don't want the Ultimas, you really like your Oakley boots, your Nike boots, your Bates or whatever, just lace them up, man. Lace them up, because you're better off, especially on the operational side, with a good fitting wet boot than a really crappy fitting dry boot that's ultimately already wet. You know what I mean? That's what it ends up being. You just end up wearing a crappy wet boot. Well, why not wear a good boot? And that in the boat, then, if you have a good heel, what's hitting the ground? It's your feet. That's where all that force is. So if you have a really crappy, loose OTB boot that's just your foot's all over the place, you're going to work a whole lot harder.
Yeah.
Wear your favorite, most stable footwear in the boat. Just do it. Don't go, well, I don't. It's worth your health and it's worth your time. Buy good boots.
Good point. What do you think about weight belt or like a back support?
I would say that if I'm going to wear anything as a back support, I would like make sure, because they make them now for body armor. They make the what's it called? What Nalgene bottles are made out of? Lexan. So Lexan doesn't shatter. NASCAR windshields are made of Lexan. Nalgene drinking bottles are made out of Lexan. Huh. London Bridge makes a insert. It's a Lexan insert it's kind of S-curved like your back.
Oh, okay.
It slides underneath your body armor.
Okay.
Like in where the body armor plate carrier is at. And that's what I wore. And then it cummerbunds, it clips around, it sits on your waist.
Right.
So whenever we did maritime work, most all of us wore those Lexan cummerbunds. Because now the weight's sitting on your hips and not just boom, driving you forward. That force is going into your hip.
Okay? I gotcha.
So one of the guys at the command, in the squadron I was at, I won't say his name, but he worked over for a couple of years, and like 3 or 4 of us, I did my last 6 deployments, even not on the water. Like that's what I wore, that cummerbund. It was
just help support for everything.
Yeah, so you don't get like that the body armor gets pinched, being pushed down. Now, your hips will get sore and you kind of unclip it now, and then you shake it out, and then you clip it back in. But that for me was a great relief. I'm not sure if any other companies are making it, but I know London Bridge makes it.
Gotcha.
It's a lifesaver for those boat rides.
Yeah, I remember our drivers in the boat, because it'd be 2 different guys. You'd have the drivers that would drive your boats, and then you would hop off the boats and go do your thing. They always had belts on. I think they even called them kidney belts. And
some motocross. Yeah. If you're going to wear a belt, my suggestion is wear one that doesn't lock you in. Like those kidney belts, they'll stretch you.
Yeah.
And not like a weight belt, not like a leather weight belt. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Wear something, because the problem is be very careful with the kidney belt. Tighter isn't better. If it restricts your breathing at all, it's too tight. Mm-hmm. There's a difference between like it's on there and giving you that squeeze, but you're not like your abdomen can't expand naturally. We don't want that. Occasionally you're like, oh, it's really getting your back's trouble. You might gur it down for an hour, but you don't want to stay there. You don't want to stay that. So as soon as you get out of that boat, man, loosen it up.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a reason why they wear those belts, and there's a reason why they have knee braces and special seating, because the impact forces are so much. When you don't have that, you will very likely be pissing blood the next day.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how bad the impacts are.
Yeah. So we some of the measurements that we were part of, there's been a lot of research and study at the command I came from on G-forces and impact in those boats. And it's not uncommon for the boats that we were in to be consistently hitting 22 Gs, which now they're micro.
Yeah.
They're micro. But again, instead of like, if you're in a jet, again, I may completely bastardize this. I don't mean to. So like if you're in a jet, like an F-18, F-15, Raptor, whatever it is, and you push as many Gs as you can, it's not super uncommon, I think, to get up to maybe 9, maybe 10 or 11. But that's like, it's sustained for
it's like astronaut stuff.
6, 7, 8 seconds, maybe 10, and then maybe they'll pass out or they come out of the turn. And that's not trauma. Don't get me wrong. Now you get in a boat and you're in a 4-hour boat ride of bam, bam, and you hit 22 micro Gs, 3,300 times. It adds up. It is a force equals mass times acceleration is 2 different ones.
That's why we like this question. That's why we like this question, because this is from a young guy.
Yeah, he's on it, man.
Starting his job, and he sees, the impact the job can have on you. So there's ways to be smart about it. That's why there is such a thing called tactical fitness. Mm-hmm. That's why there are, gears and special seating for these type of things, but you have to listen to them. I mean, the reason why you have rules of how you sit on one of these boats is usually written in blood. Someone got seriously injured. Somebody might have died from not being properly, located in the boat. But yeah, it's serious, very serious.
Yeah, I can say like this is. I'll use my words as careful as possible. Now, I've done a fair number of combat missions and deployments, and it's not really about that, but it's like I've never really been like, oh, like frightened, like I've been, yeah, plenty like, super anxious and heightened senses. And I've never really been scared on target. I've been like a couple of times, like that was close, but I've been afraid twice, legitimately scared twice. And both times it's been on a boat.
Oh, absolutely.
Freaking absolutely. Just like if I fall, I die. Yes. I've only encountered that twice in training and in real world missions. And well, no, I've only encountered it twice. It was both times in training.
Right.
And it was on a boat. And oh my goodness, it's frightening. So what my point of saying all that is like, you're never going to eliminate that sort of that acute sort of fright or trauma, but we can do our best to mitigate some of that physical trauma. So after a long boat ride and you have a ladder to climb, you have enough energy, you have enough motor function still that sustain through that rough ride to then get up that ladder or get on that ship. And now you got to go to work. So that's the crazy thing is like getting to mission in a boat, whether
I would rather swim it.
Yeah, it's like it seems like this really cool, sexy thing, and then you're just like 4-hour stock. You jump out of the plane, get in the boats. It's a 4-hour, 6-hour, 2-hour, 1 hour, whatever it is, and it's aggressive to get to where you're going, and you're like, well, shoot, now I got to go to work.
Yeah.
The taxi ride was terrible. Yeah. It's like being in downtown Manhattan and like a taxi with no brakes, no shocks. It just would be awful.
Yeah.
And a gravel, whatever. But use whatever analogy. But so that's the emphasis is for me. My summary is riding in a boat with all that vibration and that potential G-forces. That job task eliminates the excuse of not being a well-rounded athlete. That's like it's of anything that I've ever done in the military as a job in those boats, they're so unforgiving.
Yeah.
So now it's like, well, there's no excuse to not do those fundamental exercises and really like, yep, you should be doing deadlifts and stuff like that. But honestly, the deadlift problem then becomes, well, we're not going to generate enough appropriate fatigue in that single lift. So we got to get implements that we got to move around, getting to the sandbags and get into those lunges and get all those things that really the bulk of your training then becomes actually, it's the opposite. Like in the boat, you're stationary. You don't necessarily want to do stationary exercises in abundance. You want to do movement stuff with load. It's the best way for you to handle because when those boats really hit, you're going to boom. We've hit so hard, we've broken the hull.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, and we ended up on the floor, and I could have swore I broke ribs.
Yeah. Because
it just pinned you to the ground. Like we hit so hard that all 6 of us ended up on the floor. The boat broke. The $22 million hull broke on the ship. And we were in 30-foot seas. We're in 30-foot seas, 30 miles off the coast in a hurricane.
Yeah.
It sucked.
That's rough.
So it hurt, man, for days. So your bottom 2 or 3 ribs aren't attached.
Right.
Mine had moved. It had just, boom, it just moved my ribs, and it sucked, headaches. And I certainly had a concussion. I lost consciousness. All of us did. You wake up and your face smacked your buddy's knee. You know what I mean? It just pinned us. So you can't avoid that.
Yeah.
All you can hope to do is condition the body to endure some of those loads so it can recover.
Right. My conclusion for this one is don't skip leg day.
Don't let your sailor friends and soldiers and Marines skip leg day if they're a maritime unit.
Don't skip leg day, and make your leg day more of a pretty aggressive circuit.
Yeah.
So if you're going to do your deadlifts, go right into lunges. Go right into, maybe if you need a break from legs, go and hang from a pull-up bar, right? And just work on some grip a little bit. So kind of treat it almost like not necessarily an upper body day, but you're also going to work grip whenever you're resting your legs in between, creating these little circuits, and, walk up and down steps, with one weight in one hand.
Yep.
Or
like
or an imbalanced. Yeah.
Don't make sure we maintain some good flexibility this way too. So after a lot of those carries and stuff, right? Lay on that Swiss ball, get long, let that front side, stretch back out, those rib cage, everything. That way, believe it or not, that's going to, when that front side gets tight, well, the back side's got to counteract it and get tight back to get you back up. So let's stretch that front side out. So all that work we put in of carrying and squatting and all those sort of things, it can go, okay, I'm not trying to fight the front side. I can just heal and get stronger.
Right.
Keep posture back, keeps back healthy because that front side's not fighting you.
Yep. So, I love that. And your idea to put medicine balls, go medicine balls over your shoulder. It's kind of like that new Army fitness test where they do the squat and they do the medicine ball throw over their head.
Yep. Yeah.
So that's a good way to, introduce power to that same movement.
Let me give you a real cheap, kind of like your sand baby.
Yeah.
Like or you can find them. Like no one, like some people coming out of boot camp have them. Like your sea bag, your old sea bag.
Oh, yeah.
Go to Home Depot, buy the 40 pounds of the rubber mulch that you would put like in a playground. I think they were like $8 or $10. Take that 40-pound bag and just stick it in your sea bag, or 2 of them. So you have 80 pounds. And then just, put that, how you put the paddle, you got to feed it through so you can put the padlock on. Do that. You don't have to put a padlock on it. Put a clip to it, and then just tape that clip up. Now you got a big sandbag to throw over, and it won't hurt nothing. And if rubber falls out of it, whatever. That's why I leave the mulch in the bag.
Yeah, don't undo it.
Throw some duct tape around those bags. You don't have to bound it up too tight because you want it loose.
Yeah.
I've dumped it in there before, and to be honest with you, if you tape up that clip pretty good, you don't get much rubber mulch out of there, to be honest with you.
Nice.
Or you could go as much as get a leather needle, like a hefty needle, like a Target, and then just use dental floss. Put dental floss through it and just sew it up real quick so the stuff doesn't fall out. It doesn't have to be pretty sewing, but dental floss being nylon, super strong, and it won't break.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. That's a good homemade sandbag there.
Yes, it is. And it's comfortable, so you can get that thing and put it on your shoulder, man. It's comfortable. It really is.
Yeah. So,
and it's and pretty much, if you don't have a sea bag, I bet you can go to your the guy that's checking into your unit, or someone, or an old guy's like, hey, Master Chief, you got an old sea bag? It's like, dude, I got 6 of them, and they're in the dermo bin.
Right.
And he's like, I've been wanting to get rid of them.
I bet you can find them on eBay for $5.
For nothing, So just improvise. And if you want to go with a really good sandbag company, that's the best sandbag company, I think, for a couple reasons is, number one, it's American-made, Brute Force. But I like buying those because if you I have the big medicine balls, but freight is like $300 for a 100-pound medicine. Like the medicine ball cost me $100, freight cost me $300. So if you buy the Brute Force, that's just a sack.
Yeah, and you fill it up with sand, and you're good to go. Yeah.
If you live in a beach community, sand is free.
Or you can go to Home Depot, get a $5 bag of play sand that you put in it's 50 pounds.
Yep.
Put it in a 50-pound bag of sand, and you're good to go.
Bam. Perfect. So hopefully, guys, that helps. And Stu and I both believe if you go through some of these sandbag works, these exercises, now being on the boat's still going to be a booger.
Yeah.
Right. So and that's the other side too, is if you're in the boat, get acclimated to getting into the water. Like that's a really good way to decompress. Do some treading, right? Do that sandbag work that we're talking about, those lunges and those carries. Go get in the pool, man. Do some treading to finish it. Get that spine locked.
Mobility day on the back end of those events. Good idea.
If you're in the other side too is if you're in a training environment, like the boat guys here are in Mississippi and San Diego and Hawaii and all these places and all the Army units. Well, if you're in a training environment and you're on water and you get out of that boat, take off your dry suit if it's nice, or put a wetsuit on and get in the water for 10 minutes. Yeah. You just got off the boat, get in the water, get your traction, man. Let gravity go to work. Get out of the water. That water is going to feel good. You're going to be able to stretch out.
Yeah,
if you're a boat guy, get in the water.
Yeah.
So
Love it.
hopefully that helps, folks.
Yeah, great question. Keep sending them. You can post them down below in our YouTube channels, or just send us an email. This was an email from a guy that just wanted some advice on salvation, or I guess I should say saving his career in the later years.
That's smart, man, because he's
really
going to be a chief, a senior chief, a master chief, sharing this knowledge with his young coasties and or whoever. It's good. It's good.
Good call. All right, Jeff. Thanks a lot.
Appreciate it, Stu.
We'll see you.